Hello. Hello, everyone. So, hello. So it looks like I am live, at least on YouTube and on Instagram. Facebook is still giving me problems. The browser is not current, and therefore there's a problem with the browser on Facebook. So it's not letting me start the live chat on Facebook, unfortunately. I will see if I can get that fixed for next week at least. Hello, everyone joining. Hello. Hi, Momo. Nice to see you. Nice to see you all joining. Wow, on Instagram. Fantastic. And on YouTube, I don't know if people are there yet, but maybe some people will be coming. So welcome to you all on Instagram at the moment. Hopefully the connection will get better. I'm just going to try and change a few things here so that I can. Okay. So that it will hopefully be better for you all and for me too. So very, very nice to see you all coming in. Thank you so much for coming. And yeah, we're going to talk about our favorite topic, languages. So good to see you. Hi Tetsu, nice to see you. Wow. Hi Lee, Akemi, hi. People coming in. Emma, nice to see you all. So please, yes, do take your seats, get comfortable, because we're going to talk about languages. And it's always a pleasure to have these chats. Unfortunately, I think for some reason on Instagram I'm getting a strange connection, but on YouTube it looks okay. Facebook, I'm sorry, Facebook people. Unfortunately, it's not allowing me to have the usual live, and I don't know why. I think it's because of I got a message something about I got a message about the browser not being a problem. So we'll see what we can do with Facebook in the future, and I will get back onto it. I will obviously publish this on Facebook afterwards. It takes about a day for it to figure out on YouTube, and then I can post it on Facebook. So hello. Hi, Ryan. Nice to see you, Ryan. Good to see you. Huge happy birthday to your little boy. That was so sweet. I love the pictures. It's so nice to see him doing so well. Bless him. Hi, Eric. How are you? How are things going? Wow. Nice to see you. Hello. Oh, wow. So, I had quite a lot of questions last time, and I think some of them maybe I should try and address before I get some more in, I guess. It's good to see you too, Momo. I'm pleased I could be on Instagram. At least Instagram's working. Hello, Connor. Hello, Mr. Richardson. Hello, nice to see you all. So, unfortunately, with Instagram, it's going in and out. So if you see me on Instagram and it keeps cutting out, I apologize. Hopefully it will get better. But thank you all for joining. What's the best way to learn Russian? I've had this question on about two or three of all of pretty much every single one. The best way to learn Russian, slowly but surely. Don't worry too much about the cases. This is actually an interesting topic because I think it changes. And so because the whole word changes, it often feels like it's a big thing to do. So people often ask me about Russian for this reason. So what I say about Russian is this, that it's good to learn the cases you need them. So if you're learning how to go by bus, then it's good to learn just, I go there by bus, and learn by bus as a set expression in Russian. And then if you go by plane or you go by car or you go by anything else, learn it as a set expression. Because if you learn as a set expression, it means that you are basically able to reproduce what you need when you need it. And then as you learn more and more of those set expressions, it becomes something that you will start understanding as a rule in the language. And you start seeing the patterns, kind of as a child would see the patterns in a language as they learn from infancy. A child would learn patterns naturally. And so you can learn patterns naturally in a language too. So I would definitely say do it as something you learn as you go on, learning by rote all of the different declensions of a noun, for example, is something that just takes a lot of time to do, and also not a huge advantage for when you're in a conversation with somebody, because you're thinking about tables almost as though it's Latin or another language that you're not likely to speak, but more read. So I would say that's what my top tip is for a language like Russian, and to practice it daily, because the words are quite different if you're an English speaker, for example, to learn to speak so what you need and when you need it. So I have a question here from Emma. Let's see. Hi, Richard. How are you? I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing? The next language I want to learn now. So at the moment, I'm learning Maori. I'm dabbling in some Basque and also North Sami. They're the three that I'm playing with at the moment. Maori for me was kind of the one that I wanted to do for a long time, and I've been doing it for a while. So there's Maori, North Sami, and Basque. So we'll tell you've been living in Sweden for 2 years, and if you still find Swedish hard, what's the advice? So I think that with a language like Swedish, there is a lot in common with English, because it's also a Germanic language. So if you already speak English, you've got some help there with English. Focusing on how to pronounce Swedish helps. So you do need to take time with a language like Swedish to work on the pronunciation of the words, so that it becomes more natural, easier for you to read what you see, recognize what you hear, and to be able to put the two together. So when I studied Swedish at university, we had to do a full year of just focusing on pronouncing the language properly. And that doesn't mean to say that you have to have a perfect accent. That's not the same thing. But understanding the pronunciation, the way the sort of the language works with its sounds, is extremely important. So taking time to do that and to do it justice, I think, is probably the first thing. And then the second thing is focusing on what you need. So focus on saying what you need to say in the first instance, and building out from there. They're the most important things to do in any language, in fact, not just Swedish, because obviously when you're talking to somebody about something that's important to you, or about things that are pertinent to your life, that's a good starting point. And then when you've gone from that, it's talking about things that are interesting to you for whatever reason, whether you want to talk about because it's in the news, you're particularly passionate about a subject, and then you build on the subjects from there. So that's what I would say you should do. If you're living in Sweden, you might want to try and find some interest groups of things that you enjoy. So some ideas I've used in the past, I went to salsa lessons in the Czech Republic to improve my Czech. I went to Greek lessons in the Netherlands to improve my Dutch. You can go to all these things, and what you'll find, especially like a beginner's language class, is if they're doing it in the language, you're going to repeat all of the basic language as well while you're in Sweden. But for a new language, and it may not be that you want to learn the new language, it may just be that you're doing it because you want to learn Swedish better, or meet Swedes, or you know what I mean? They're the kinds of things that really help you to practice language when you're in the country. Other things that you could do are, often some countries, especially Western countries, will often have book clubs for foreigners to be able to practice together, to read in a book. I mean, they used to have that in the library in Chester, where I'm from. They used to have a book club for foreigners, and that's quite cool. So I hope that helps. Hello from Gjör in Hungary. Nice. Hello from Brazil. Olá, tudo bem? Nice to see you, Carlos. Hello from you all coming. Okay, wow. Advice on learning German, Haddad. I would say the same as I said now for Swedish would be advice I would give to anybody wanting to learn a language. If there's something more specific, I'm happy to try and answer that. But in general terms, that's my main advice to people. So Clea, I can ask you asking about the Polyglot conference in Cholula. So a week on Sunday, we will have another update about the Polyglot conference in Cholula. So please do join the Polyglot conference channel and join us for the live update then. We won't be taking a final decision on sort of the big question, I guess, until the 7th of June, which is when we hopefully will have made a decision and we'll have a better idea as to exactly what's going on. But we will have updates in a week on Sunday. So not this Sunday, the Sunday after. And we do them every 2 weeks on a Sunday. I do the updates on Cholula as well, but on the Polyglot conference channels. Do you have yourself another language or a higher degree? To a higher degree, any more like the Macedonian, or will that be your Indonesian or Japanese? You know, Ryan, actually, I wouldn't mind taking other languages to a higher level. So at the moment, I'm taking my Albanian to a higher level. I just think that, you know, living in the Balkans, speaking a number of Balkan languages, it's probably good to have at the moment at the high level. So I'm actually focusing on my Albanian really at the moment, as one I would like to take to a higher level. If there are any others, I don't know yet. Possibly Turkish, to take it to a higher level as well, because it's another useful language for me. And I think it will depend on what I see as useful for my life. I don't really go for taking languages to a very high level unless I need to, because it's not a naturally occurring thing. But yeah, for sure, I would take more to a high level. So far, it's been really that. Tips to learn the pronunciation of a difficult language like Czech or Russian. So I would say, Sebastian, a lot of back chaining. So looking at the word, how it's pronounced, taking it out to its individual parts, listening to it in a slow version if possible. So slowing down the version you're listening to. That's often doable on things like YouTube, because you can slow the speed down if you're listening to something on YouTube, or even on a lot of things now, like even on your normal audio or video players on your computer, you can often play them at half speed or quarter speed or 3/4 speed, so that you can hear them slowly and then try and repeat them from there if you're finding it difficult to hear the sounds. Also ask people for feedback on how you're pronouncing it. Have them repeat things back to you and see if you can get it exactly as they're saying it. Of course, your accent may not exactly match, but just doing things like that will help. And then if you want to get on to really getting your accent right, then there are techniques that Luca Lampariello describes in much more depth, on looking at pitch, looking at where people's intonation goes up and down in a sentence. And basically that's listening very, very carefully to how the porosity of the language is, getting people to say certain sentences and making notes and annotations on it, so that you can listen to exactly how it's said by a native level speaker. So I'd say that would be the ways I would do it. Recording your voice, of course, as well, listening back to your recording and then comparing it to the original. All of these things are really, really useful for your accent. Let me see, I think there was another one ahead of that as well. Do you think that italki would be a good option for beginners? Absolutely. Finding the right, so Emreos, I think that really is a good thing to use. So talking to somebody, getting that feedback early on is really handy. I really find it useful for my own language learning. So yeah, definitely you can use italki from the beginning. What I would say is, Emre, make sure that you have got a clear idea of what you want to achieve with each lesson. Because there can be, especially if you go with community teachers, you can fall into the trap of it turning into a lot of English. And of course, you don't get the full benefit of that if you're just going to a class and it's all in a language you already speak. It's good then to have something prepared, maybe prepare things to read, things to talk about yourself, and be an active participant, like an active student, and go with things that you actually want to say and do. So please, yeah, think about doing things actively yourself, so that when you go to the class, you're not just waiting for the teacher to speak. Thoughts on Matt versus Japan? I don't know what Matt versus Japan is, unfortunately. Ahmed, I don't know what that is. Matt versus Japan. Sorry, if you explain it, I might be able to get back to you and see. Oh, nice to see you from Cholula. Uh, yeah, we would love to have. I mean, we are very excited about going to Cholula. Beautiful place. And next time, I mean, we will go there. It's just a matter of whether or not it can happen this year. That's the question, really. We just don't know. Obviously, the situation's quite strange at the moment, so we want to make sure we get the best out of Cholula. Cholula's a beautiful place, and we'd love to go. So I hope that we'll be able to get there, and it will be fine. We just don't know at the moment. Um, let me see. Are there any other questions here that I can see? Okay, so the area of vocabulary generally the most challenging for me. Okay, chemical substances in Spanish, German, or French. So Jack, so for me, yes, there are obviously challenging vocabulary areas in any language, even in English. There are going to be areas of expertise that I'm not affair with. You know, I just don't know everything. I can't possibly, and neither can anyone else. So I think accepting that there are going to be limitations always is fine. I know there are people out there that really are sort of hell bent on learning everything, and unfortunately, that's never going to happen. So I hate to burst anyone's bubbles out there of these illusions of knowing everything and being perfect in any language. No one out there is ever going to be perfect in any language ever. 100% of the time just isn't going to happen. So the sooner you let go of that, I think as a learner, particularly the better, because it means that you can allow yourself to make mistakes and to not have full control of every single aspect of the language. In answer to your question specifically for me with flowers and animals, so my thing as a kid was I used to love learning the names of different animals in languages and birds particularly. So my knowledge of birds in French and Spanish and German and Macedonian is really, really quite good. In fact, my knowledge of birds in Macedonia is a lot higher than most native monolingual speakers. They would not be able to recognize as many birds as I can in Macedonia, people who don't know words that I know in terms of vocabulary for birds. It's not that I am a particularly keen ornithologist. It's just that where I'm from in the UK, bird vocabulary is particularly important to us. My family always used the names of birds instead of just saying there's a bird in the garden. It would always be a specific bird. So I kind of have a strange vocabulary, and even in English, some native English speakers wouldn't know all of the birds. Although I think on the whole, generally, native English speakers do tend to be better with birds, sort of as an average, than say Macedonian speakers with Macedonian names of birds. French speakers are okay, and Spanish speakers and German speakers too. They tend to know a lot of the ones that I would expect them to know that they'd see on a daily basis. In the Balkans, they don't tend to really know, and even things that are birds that they would see, they don't tend to know them. So yes, in a way, there would be other things that, for example, I didn't study chemistry in certain languages, so maybe some chemistry vocabulary might be missing in some of my languages. But given I don't work in chemistry and it's not in the news very often, if I hear it, then I'll probably pick up words from time to time, but there will still be gaps, and that's normal. It may be if I needed the vocabulary, I could brush up on it, I guess. But I think that even if I did, I would lose it if I didn't use it. So what's the, okay, let's see, I'm getting some, quite a lot of questions here, and I will try to get to them all. I always end up running over and don't get to them, so please do forgive me if I don't get to your one. Okay, so, let's see for April, so what is the best Slavic language to start with? And you can't decide between Czech, Russian, or Ukrainian. Wow, okay. So if it's a choice between those three, depends what you want. So the best choice is always the one that you're most motivated to learn, in my opinion. So in terms of the easiest Slavic language to learn, I would say it's Macedonian and Bulgarian because they don't have cases. So they're quite easy to learn. Bulgarian is probably easier than Macedonian because there are more things available to learn Bulgarian. There are more books available to learn Bulgarian. The only thing with Bulgarian is that there itself, I have looked at Ukrainian, and it feels like an easier goal than Czech and Russian for some of the points. But I think you have picked 3 of the more challenging Slavic languages to choose from there. If you were going to learn any, and it was like from 0, any to get into a Slavic language group to start building a good base of Slavic words, I would say Bulgarian would do that pretty well, and you'd get a lot of resources for it easily. Macedonian would, resources harder to come by. Also, Bulgarians tend to speak sort of a lower level of English than Macedonians on the whole. They don't tend to speak it as well because their TV is dubbed, and they don't have as much contact with English in Bulgaria as in like where I'm in North Macedonia. They tend to speak a higher level of English. So the entry level for you to start speaking their languages is actually lower in Bulgaria. So you'll be able to start speaking Bulgarian quite quickly. And then also the other languages that that you haven't written there that I would consider with easier cases would be Serbian and Croatian, because there are a lot of materials for both of those languages. Also, the case forms are actually a lot easier to master than, say, Russian or Czech or Ukrainian, because they feel a lot more regular. And then also the pronunciation is not that bad to learn either. It's a lot more open. It's not as many crazy consonant clusters as Russian and Czech, and probably Ukrainian too. The only thing is with Czech and with Serbian and Croatian particularly, and if you want to go into the other variants of the Southeast Slavic languages, they tend to speak from the former Yugoslav republics. They tend to speak better English than, say, a Russian speaker from Russia, because they have everything in original language on TV. So if you learn Russian, pronunciation, grammar can be a bit challenging, but once you can say things, you'll get to speak it, because Russian speakers tend to like you speaking Russian, and they find it harder to speak English. In Ukraine, they do tend to speak English a bit better. And then in the Balkans, except for Bulgaria, they do tend to speak pretty good English. I'd say the average level of English around here is around, in sort of the former Yugoslav countries, is around a B2, B1, B2 level for most people, say under the age of 60. And then in Bulgaria, the average level would be around A2, I guess, maybe even lower in some parts of Bulgaria. So yeah, they're the fors and against. Let me know what you decide. That was quite of a long answer, wasn't it, really, for what I guessed you thought was going to be a very quick question. They're never that easy, these questions. There's always so much I can say on them. Really good to see you too, Marcus. Nice to see you. Thank you for coming. Thank you, everyone, for coming and joining this. Wow, this is so nice of you to all come. How to begin learning? Wow, so beginning learning, Roslyn, is good to see you, by the way. And I do get that question quite a lot. Honestly, I think, Roslyn, I think I gave a pretty good answer with what I said with Swedish and before, that that you start with things that you need and you set yourself goals. So start a language. Don't ever say to yourself, I'm going to learn Swahili, I'm going to learn Afrikaans, or I'm going to learn whatever language you want to learn. Say you want to learn to do something in that language, and then go from there. Because if you say, I'm going to learn how to introduce myself, say my name, say how old I am, say where I'm from, great thing to start with in the beginning for the first week or two. Move on from there. Then I'm going to start talking about my job, where my family, what my family does as a job, for example, and learn the words that relate to what you do and that mean something to you, that are meaningful, because you're going to have to repeat that vocabulary over and over and over and over and over again. And that's how you learn a language, by repeating something many, many times until it becomes automatic. That's really the trick of it. There's unfortunately no magic pill. Sorry if you thought there was, there isn't. And it takes me a long time to do it too. It's just I do it constantly on a daily basis all day. I'm always thinking about languages. And that's why the repetition maybe for me is kind of just automatic and I'm doing it all the time. I guess kind of like people who are into fitness just are constantly doing something that's always challenging their bodies and their physique. And so unfortunately, yeah, I mean, if I were in a kind of the equivalent of a gym person, then I might be quite nice and bulky. Instead, yeah, I'm challenging Sandra on my belly, unfortunately. But yeah, that's what I would do. I would repetition completely, repeating over and over again. Thinking about the language all the time is really important. I'm just trying to read through the other questions. Good evening, Mr. Simcott. Wow, thank you very much. I feel almost like I've been elevated to a new level. Thank you. Let's see, the easiest part of learning Spanish. Okay. What's the hardest and easiest part of learning Spanish? Can you give it the advice? Okay, I'm a beginner. I try and find the right resources. Thanks. Okay, so this isn't just Spanish. This is all Latin languages. Latin languages feel more challenging because of all of their verb changes. They have a lot of verb tenses, they have a lot of conjugations, and to get them right and to get used to saying them automatically takes a lot of practice. The way you do this is you can learn the kind of, hablo, hablas, habla, hablamos, habláis, hablan. And you can do it that way, learn it. I had to at school, I had to learn the verbs that way. And it's good to do it to train the way you understand the patterns, and you do start getting the patterns, especially of verbs that are regular, for example. It does help. The game changer is when you start using them in sentences. So, for example, yo hablo español, pero mi hermano no habla español. Mi hermano habla inglés. Yo hablo inglés también. Mis padres no hablan inglés, pero hablan español muy bien. So can you see it's a very, very basic level of Spanish. I'm just manipulating the verbs to say something simple, but changing the verbs each time. And the key to learning these verbs, which is I would say the most challenging thing about any of the Latin languages, is to manipulate them in your conversation over and over again. Even sometimes if it sounds forced or feels forced, practice them with your language partners, practice them with your teachers. Learn to say things about yourself, then learn to say the same things about your brother, sister, mother, father, nephew, niece, best friend, cat, dog, whoever, or whatever you want to say. Just learn to be able to manipulate the language that way, and then you'll see that you'll actually start learning these automatically. Okay, so I hope that helps. What authentic video resources do you recommend for B1 Turkish? Good question. So honestly, with Turkish, I did the B1 course at Yunus Emre. I went to a class and we did 16 hours a week of Turkish. 16 hours a week, I think it was, of Turkish. We had some realia, some real life examples, but they were in the book, so they were sort of edited for the book. And there were things like articles on cinema, articles on the military service, articles on people's hobbies, places to go for a holiday, what there was to do there. These kinds of things, they were useful. We also had some readers, and there were like stories and stuff to do. With Turkish particularly, if it's your first Turkic language, I would say that the challenge from going the B1 to B2 and further, for me personally, has always been, it just takes a longer time for me to get the vocabulary to become not just automatic, but also the sentence structure, for that to become more natural. And I'm still going through that process to break through past the B1 level myself in Turkish. I find it's taking me years to do, frankly, and that's because I've not been doing it really intensively. I'm enjoying taking the time to do it, and I've been enjoying getting used to the kind of the A to B1 structures that I learned and vocabulary that goes with that. but also now taking it on. I speak to somebody at least once a week in Turkish, and I try and speak to people whenever I can, in real life as well. And I'll put on some TV or radio just to listen to it as well every now and again, just to keep listening and practicing that, listening to it, seeing what I can pick out. But there are certain things that you can look at. I would say going onto the TRT website, looking at news in Turkish, and picking out things that are of interest to you. So topics that you find particularly engaging and interesting that you want to talk about. Look at it, analyze the text, pick out the words that you want, and try and use it. I recommended Link recently. That's LINGQ, link.com. And Turkish is one of the languages that's on Link. And there are podcasts and there are things that are taken in from the web into Link, and you can use them and listen to things in Turkish too. So you could try that as one way of doing it with Realia in Turkish. So I hope that helps. Okay, so Rosalind, you're currently learning Italian slowly and bilingual level in French, but very beginner in Spanish. They're all similar. And should I do Italian before Spanish? Rosalind, good question. Doing multiple languages that are from the same family can be challenging. I had people on my course at university, some of them dropped one of the languages that they were doing because they took on two that they weren't proficient in and started them at the same time or at similar times, and they found that they were just getting confused and had to drop one. Other people managed to carry on both and it was fine. They were able to just get on with it. There was one person who was on my course and actually carried on. I don't know whether or not she passed the course in Portuguese. This was, but to my mind, she never ever really divorced her knowledge of Galician from the Portuguese. And in the beginning, her Portuguese sounded amazing. After a year, I could tell it wasn't really Portuguese, it was Galician she was speaking. And then after 2 years, she was still speaking the same Galician she was speaking to the Portuguese teacher in the beginning. And I didn't hear any evidence of a Portuguese style pronunciation of the language. And it sounded like Galician in the end still. But with Italian and Spanish, they are, I would say, because the accents are sufficiently different, that you can focus on the accent and the pronunciation because they are so different. It's not like Galician and Portuguese where they're very, very similar and can get very confusing. I would say that you can more easily separate the two. Too confusing, just leave one for a bit, focus on the other one until you feel that you're at a level where you can really do yourself justice. Maybe take on a language that's a bit different if you feel like an extra challenge. Go back to Italian later. It's not going anywhere, and your Spanish will help your Italian without you even knowing it, because once you add more than one language to a language family that you're exploring, you will just see automatically your levels go up a lot more quickly when you go back to the other language. And then when you do go back to them, when you have the two, I challenge you to do back-to-back speaking activities or exercises, so that your brain is forced to switch quickly between the two, and that will help you to also differentiate between two languages. My click with Italian and Spanish was when I was on a university in Verona, and I was fortunate enough to be in the advanced class with a group of Spanish speakers. Of course, they were in the advanced class because they were Spanish speakers, and for them it was easy to learn Italian. Some of them, again, spoke a lot of Spanish. But what I did is I listened very, very carefully to the Spanish mistakes in Italian and the corrections, and I was very, very active in my listening. And I found that trying to imitate how they spoke Italian and trying to imitate an Italian accent in Spanish, strangely, helped me to divorce the languages a lot better. And from that time, I spent a month in this class with these Spanish speakers, and that really helped my Italian, and it also really helped my Spanish. So yeah, I would say do that, challenge yourself, and it helps your brain just go. but I still get that with some languages even to this day. If I speak Czech, Polish, and then if somebody speaks to me in Slovak, I find for me it just blows my mind still. I'm fine to speak Czech and I'm fine to speak Polish, kind of if I speak them as separate languages, or if I'm in one situation I speak one and then another. But then I do sometimes need time to get into it, and I also I find that if I have this at some of the events where I go and people will speak to me in Czech and then Slovak and then Polish, and if someone speaks to me in Slovak, it used to really mess with my brain and I'd end up speaking this mishmash. So yeah. Zdravo Martin, zdravo, kako si? Good to see you. Let's see, my problem. So David, my problem is that I am interested in many languages, but I don't have a particular reason or focus in one. So you find yourself dabbling. Oh, David, you are probably one in many, many of us who have the problem of dabbling in lots of languages. We all have that problem. Totally empathize with you, and many, many people listening probably can do too. So you are not on your own. Do this to yourself, David, okay? This might help you. Say to yourself, focus on where you want to be in X months or years' time. And do you want to say, I dabbled in lots of languages, and that in itself is fine. There are people who dabble in a number of languages, they get to a basic level in a number of languages, and that's fine in of itself. It's an interesting thing to do, right? To explore basic levels in a language. It's absolutely fine to do. And I think it's a commendable thing to, commendable endeavor, something it's worth it's in its own right study, right? That said, if that's not your goal, and your goal is to improve your level in a particular language or a particular set of languages, then make sure you're aware of that yourself. And if you are aware of that and you write down, I want to be like good at or better at this, and this, then set yourself specific goals. Because if you don't, you will just end up being a language butterfly for the rest of your life. And I know that because I've seen it happen many, many times. It happens to the best of us, and I have periods of my life where I end up being the language butterfly too. So absolutely understand. So for me, I had this recently where I was dabbling in lots of languages. I got into language projects because I didn't really need to take any other languages to a very, very high level, but I did need to have an understanding of more languages and be able to go for trips or for specific purposes to countries and speak the language to a basic level. So that was what I wanted. So I just let myself do that. But recently, I've actually said to myself, before in the next 5 years, I want to be able to say I can really hold my own in Albanian and speak well. And now I've set myself a goal to speak Albanian better. And I am not going to hold myself down to this C2, C1 level. It doesn't really mean very much to me, because what I really need to be able to do is communicate with people, but I want to just communicate better. So I'm taking each day as it comes, and I'm at a level in Albanian where I'm probably like a B1-ish level. So I can have a conversation for an hour in Albanian. It's not a problem. I'll make mistakes. I may not know some words, but I can definitely hold my own in an Albanian conversation. And also, if I watch TV, I can understand the news. I can understand. I can watch a series and understand what's going on. I won't understand every nuance or every word, but I'll be able to watch, say, a series in Albanian and follow the storyline and get a lot of the dialogue. But what I want to do now is be able to go a bit deeper and understand more of the sort of details of what's going on as well. And so I have 3 times a week I'm doing Albanian, and I have a language class in Albanian 3 times a week, and speak Albanian for an hour those 3 times a week. And in between, I watch my TV still. I listen to things, I read things in Albanian, and slowly but surely, my vocabulary is expanding. And I'm finding that I am getting further and further towards my goal of having a better level in Albanian. And I think there is kind of a magic point that happens, and I don't quite know where that is, because it's different in each language, where you get to a point where you just something just clicks, and you take off in the language, and that's it. And I feel that I'm getting closer to that with Albanian now, which is really, really nice. Still not there, but I'm closer. I'm getting closer to it, where I can really fly. And I wait for that day. So that's kind of my goal. And I had to set myself that goal, David, because I was doing exactly what you're describing. And I also, for what Ryan asked as well, I wanted to take one of my other languages a bit higher because I have a need for it. It's a language that's spoken around me, and also I enjoy Albanian. So let me see. Any advice, David? Yeah, I hope I answered that question. I saw you ask me again, so I must have been slow on getting to you. It's because I talk quite a lot when people ask me questions. I'm sorry. Okay, from Morocco. Nice to see you. Fazal, nice to see you. Thank you for coming from Morocco. Wow. Marlon, let's see. Maybe already answered this, but using link. Yes, I have, Marlon. I've answered the link question. Maybe you can go back and see, or maybe you heard it after you'd written that. But yes, I'm enjoying link very much. Not just for me, but also with my daughter. My daughter's enjoying link as well. So there we go. Big shout out to Steve Kaufman and the crew. Yes, I'm not on commission either. So I am definitely not. I just have started using it more, and my daughter's really got into it. She's on I think she's on day 20 of a kind of a role of using it for listening to her languages in the ones we use at home, and she started doing Dutch as well. Okay, let me see. I did get a question on Instagram. I saw, do I speak Persian? Unfortunately not. It's a language I'd like to learn. Beautiful language. And about Swahili, any tips on learning Swahili? I would say the language tips that I gave generally would apply to Swahili too. I think just that starting off, it's really important to take into account what you need to say, setting realistic goals for yourself. So what are you learning in Swahili? Not just I'm learning Swahili, but what are you learning in Swahili? I think focus on that first, and then as you carry on, you'll start seeing that your level of Swahili increases gradually. Okay, I'm getting a question. How many words can I learn a day when learning a language? It would depend on the language and how close it is to languages I already speak. So clearly, there are a lot of free words for me if I learn another Germanic language or Slavic language or Romance language. They're my main focus. And so for me, learning another one of those languages goes relatively quickly. I would be able to get by probably within a couple of weeks in terms of making mistakes, but having a conversation, because A, the grammars are very similar, B, the vocabulary tends to be quite similar, and C, those patterns are known to me. And so if I were to focus quite intensively within a few weeks, I would be able to get by in a basic conversation, I guess. I would never say that I was at a certain level, though, because I think that qualifying it and saying that you can kind of, it almost feels like you're faking it when you do this with the free words and free vocabulary, free grammar that you get from other languages that are similar, because as quickly as you learn it, so if I were to do it intensively, I did this, in fact, for Slovak. I did the Slovak language learning challenge at the Polyglot gathering a few years ago. And within 2 weeks, I could have a conversation in Slovak. I could watch a series in Slovak and understand it and laugh along with it. It was called Panelak. If any Slovak speakers know that series, I could watch it, understand it. I found it funny, and it helped me learn my Slovak. Again, I did 2 weeks of intensive study. I entered the competition for Slavic speakers learning Slovak instead of just general foreigners, because my home language is a Slavic language, so it felt a bit unfair to enter as a normal foreigner. So I entered as a Slavic speaker, and I came second in that competition. The winner did a very, very good job. He also speaks Polish, I think is a native language, as well as German, and then lived in the Czech Republic. So taking on Slovak was for him as well, I imagine also quite a simple thing to do. I had an advantage because I'd studied Czech before, and also I'd studied some Polish too. And but also, as quickly as I learned it, as quickly as it went away. So now I can't really speak Slovak at all very well. I can understand it a lot better having studied it, um, and I understand the differences better. I understand how the grammar works better. But can I speak Slovak now? I wouldn't be able to respond in Slovak if somebody were to write. Um, so the how quickly I can do it for me doesn't mean very much. Um, it's the repetition and it's the long-term thing that matters more. So some languages, I would say, I've learned vocabulary very quickly, maybe over 100 or so words a day. But then, do I retain all of those words? No. So focus on learning things. I think learn what you can as much as you can, but where so it feels comfortable for you. I think is the really important thing to do, and repeat, and enjoy the ride. It's a great journey learning a language, so enjoy it. Let me see how meaningful, sincere reason to learn a language. Oh, that's a good question. Um, Started with Russian out of a shallow reason. Okay, shallow reasons for learning Russian, and you'd like to change it. You don't know how. Learning a language, it's a big thing to do. There's no getting away from it. So, if you want to learn a language and you want to learn it well, particularly if your reasons are shallow, um, and you don't find a hook, it's difficult to carry on. It's difficult to continue with that motivation. So, I would say start looking at things that you're genuinely interested in your own language or another language. It could be a topic area. It could be something you enjoy watching generally on YouTube, or something you enjoy reading about, something you enjoy doing. It could be a sporting activity. It could be anything. Start getting into that version in that language in that country. That might help you to start of getting a genuine interest in the culture and in the language. So some languages I find that people learn them because of that first, like Japanese. I meet a lot of people who learn Japanese because of manga, and they just get into it and they love it. A lot of people learn Korean because they start getting into Korean series or food or something like that, and they just get into it. There are certain languages like that where you just get into it, right? And you have to, if you have started a language without that, start investigating what you do actually enjoy in the language and see if you can find a community that you can interact with, or some news articles, some blogs, some podcasts, anything you can that will get you into it. I've got the question about words again. Would you consider Macedonian as an easy Slavic language to learn? Yeah, I've mentioned this. So yes, Macedonian is the easiest of all the Slavic languages to learn for me. I think in terms of ease of pronunciation, ease of learning the grammar and the vocabulary. The only thing that's difficult about Macedonian is there are not many materials around, so you have to be quite inventive. The other issue is that the grammar compared to other Slavic languages differs a little bit, in that in Macedonian we use this way of talking about the past tense that you were not witness to, that other Slavic languages don't use. It's from Turkish. It's the mish form in Turkish, if anybody knows Turkish, and we use it in Macedonian too, which is a bit alien. And there are more verb conjugations than other Slavic languages. Bulgarian also has it because it's a very close language. And the other things that are the agreement with direct objects is a bit strange, I think, in the beginning of Macedonian. In Macedonian, you have to do it. So you have to say basically, like, the definite article comes twice. So if you say, I see the door, you have to see I see the door, or door the, because it's back-ended in Macedonian. In Bulgarian, you don't have to say the twice. in all those circumstances. In Macedonian, you do. It's for the standard language, you have to say it. So that's a bit weird, but otherwise it's fairly regular. Just the materials are a nightmare. And also when you get materials, they try to teach you this very bookish language that you don't often hear on the streets. In really colloquial Macedonian, there are a lot of Turkish words. There are over 6,000 Turkish words in Macedonian, and they're my favorite words, in fact, and we use them a lot in day-to-day speech. They have a very different nuance, a different feel to them, and to learn those, you have to really get into the language, and they are the ones that you hear most on the street. So that is maybe more difficult, I guess, but in terms of just pure looking at the grammar and the pronunciation, everything, it's the easiest. Just the hardest in terms of getting materials and getting to speak how people speak on the street is probably harder than Bulgarian. So Bulgarian is going to be my definitive answer. Bulgarian is going to be the easiest. The other ones with the cases, I think, unless you speak a language with cases, they can be challenging. There's no way around it. Здравствуйте, Андрей. Как дела? Хорошо? Okay, didn't study any English at school. I learned YouTube, but difficulty, okay, with people. Can you give advice on, okay, learning English? I would say, well, for me, English is obviously my first language. Actually, do you know what I would say to you, Faisal? I would say that there are so many really cool English videos now that I see on Instagram and on YouTube and on Facebook with people showing you new expressions in English, colloquial expressions, pronunciation exercises, the difference between this word and that word, specific idioms, grammatical explanations. And there are lovely little short videos all on these different social media channels. Even on TikTok, there are some really cool ones as well. And I would say, look at those, find some that you like and that you enjoy watching, and do them every day. And I think over a period of time, you'll start seeing that your English will improve by listening to these people and looking out for these phrases and learning them. But the key thing and the most important thing is doing things that are in context that you come across over and over and over again. So it's one thing just listening to one thing and trying to remember it, but if you see things over and over again, they start going in. And language learning is overlearning. It's repetition to the point that it becomes automatic. That's all it is. No magic pill, unfortunately. It's just lots and lots of hours of repeating the same things over and over again. ¿Qué tal estoy? Muy bien, gracias. ¿Qué tal tú? ¿Estás bien? I'm getting some nice questions here on Instagram too. How many words can you learn? Okay, I've had this question. Let me see. I'm conscious that a lot of you are asking questions and I haven't got to you. Learning multiple languages all at once. So you can do it if it works for you, do it. So learning multiple languages at once, try it out. If you find it's getting too confusing, stop one, stop two, focus on the ones that's easiest for. I personally find it easier to do languages that are very different. So, so for example, I used to always do a project like I did, let me think which ones I did at one time now. I can't remember, it was Latvian and Norwegian at the same time, because Latvian was a different language for me, and Norwegian was like Swedish, and I did a month of Norwegian before I went to Norway, and then I did Latvian for 3 months. So I do projects like that, and I find that helps to do 2 different languages so that you separate them. Also, not just different languages in terms of different families, but also different languages that sound different. So if you take Spanish and Greek, even though they're not the same language, it's really, really tough to do Spanish and Greek together because they sound very similar. And so languages that have similar sounds gets a bit tricky. I'm finding at the moment that I've been reviving my Indonesian and I'm doing Maori, and strangely my Maori and Indonesian are also crossing over. So the other day I had a lesson, and instead of saying kata-kata for words in Indonesian, I said kupu-kupu, because kupu-kupu is words in Maori, and kupu-kupu in Indonesian means butterfly. And of course I wasn't talking about butterflies, I was talking about words which are kata-kata. And it was funny because the teacher looked at me and she was like really confused about why I was talking about butterflies. But she goes, "Do you know what kupu kupu is?" And I said, "Yeah, because I know the song, right? Pokame ame bulalang kupu kupu. Siang makan nasi kalau malam minum susu," which means in Indonesian that you in the evening you drink milk and you eat rice, and there's the belalang is a grasshopper, and the kupu kupu is the butterfly, and it's just like a kid song in Indonesian that I learned years ago when I was learning Indonesian to go to Indonesia, and yeah, it's funny the sounding of the sounds of the languages, and also whether in the same group. So I would definitely say, yeah, mixing them can be a pain. Tips on mastering tones. That will probably have to wait till next time, I think, unfortunately. Some of these other questions are really, really good, also going to be really long. I'll copy them. I'll copy the other ones that I've got here, and I'll try to answer them in new sessions. So I'm so sorry if I didn't get to you this time. I really will do my best to get to as many of these questions as I can. I'm going to be re-releasing my website, and I'm going to be starting to write blogs and also create some more materials with tips on language learning, because I think there is definitely appetite out there. I'm getting a lot of people asking me lots of really nice questions, and I really am grateful to you all coming and speaking to me and to get Facebook working and see if I can do it. Okay, I know I would love for you to be able to share it, and I know that in Facebook there's a great community too, asking lots of great questions. Right, all the best, and I see you all again very soon. Thank you so, so much for coming, and take care of yourselves, and remember to stay negative in this time of the virus. Stay negative, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.